Magic reveals itself to those who remember where to look for it. This is Magic Hour, and I'm your host, Taylor Paige. Welcome back to Magic Hour, everyone. I'm your host, Taylor Paige.
And I'm your producer, Claire. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, truly love this community of hummingbirds so much. So grateful for your 5-star reviews, for your questions, for your engagement. This community just truly means the world and touches my heart every single day. What's been on your heart lately, Claire?
Something I've been dealing with or working through recently has been setting boundaries, both in my relationships with people, and something that's come up recently for me is setting boundaries with myself, particularly around like my negative self-talk. You know, I've been kind of going through a difficult experience right now, and I was sharing that with a friend and talking about the need to set boundaries with people and stand up for my needs, even though that can be scary, or assert my needs. And I think what's difficult for me in that is I like to really lead with kindness. And sometimes it feels like I'm not being nice if I set a boundary. And so trying to like navigate through that experience of how do I assert my needs while not feeling like I'm hurting someone's feelings or shutting them down. And then as we were talking about that, I kind of expressed how I was having a lot of negative self-talk, and my inner villain, as you often talk about, was coming up and saying a lot of mean things. And my friend that I was sharing with said, you know, you need to create a boundary there. Like you need to create a boundary that does not allow that to be happening to you, from you.
That's so powerful, and just makes me think that if we have a hard time with boundaries with other people, it's most likely that there's a reflection in our inner world experience of that too. And that voice, that negative self-talk, is not the truth. It's a messenger showing you opportunity for deeper healing. And I think about it almost as different parts of your psyche debating each other, where it's like you have this healed part, this wise part, this higher self, soul-led part. But then what is the part of your psyche that's at the cocktail party that's like, this drink is disgusting and you suck? Like, what is that like negative energy place, and why does she need your attention right now?
Right. Oh my gosh. Well, and you'll find this very funny. So on this conversation, I realized that, have you seen the movie Can't Hardly Wait?
No.
So it's a super fun movie about this high school party, and there's this it's like a love story, and there's this terrible jock bro guy that breaks up with this girl, and then there's this other guy who writes her a letter, and he's been in love with her for years, and she's trying to give her the letter at the party, and they keep missing each other. And then there's this scene where the jock guy tries to get back with the girl, and she doesn't want to get back with him. And he's really mean, and everyone's watching, and he goes, "Who's going to want you now?" And that is like this horrible thing that plays in my head when I'm in a moment of like, you know, breaking up or losing someone. That voice will play. And so I was sharing that with my friend, and he was like, "So your inner villain is a douchey, bro-y man."
That's on brand.
So
that makes sense that that'd be the villain.
I know.
Yeah.
And so funny because you've brought up before that you like to speak your inner villain's voice as like a Dr. Evil character to like help make it comical. So I thought it was just so funny that my inner villain is a bro-y dude. And that helped me kind of, you know, separate it, where it was like, that is not the truth. And I don't need to let this voice nag me inside of me anymore.
Yes, needing boundaries with your inner villain, or at least boundaries with the part of yourself that listens to it and takes it seriously, because our inner villain will always be there. Our inner villain will always, as soon as we heal one thing, it will shine its light on another area for healing. And the way I see that voice is actually a coach. It's like a drill sergeant coach for our psyche. It's like, get down and give me 20, you weak ass bitch. Like, it's just this really intense part of our psyche that we all have. But if we didn't have it, we maybe wouldn't go through the lessons, the healing, the growth that we need to function in a brutal world and society. So it's like an internal piece of that external brutality that's trying to toughen us up and keep us safe and shine light on the next area for healing. But the thing is, that voice never goes away. Only our relationship to how much we believe it can change. And the reason, like you were saying, Claire, that I call it the inner villain voice is because when you, like we were saying, take those thoughts out of your mind, which feels so real and painful and deep when they're in your mind, and you actually say them out loud in a douchey bro voice or a Dr. Evil voice, that is when you can realize how ridiculous they sound outside of your own mind. Like, and that voice says such mean things. Like, I'll catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror, be like, you look awful in that dress. Ah, ha, 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 ha. It's like, you're villaining super hard right now, inner villain. Like, proud of you. Good job. You're really killing it at being a villain. But the other thing that I think is so important with personal boundaries is sometimes we check the social media when we know we shouldn't. Sometimes we don't show up to the commitments that we say we're going to, and we start to lose trust with ourselves. And when we lose trust with ourselves, we lose trust with our intuition and trusting what comes through, and we start to get to a place where we feel stuck and lost. And so in these moments where you need stronger boundaries with the wounded part of yourself that wants to do numbing behaviors or self-sabotaging behaviors, like, that's a really fertile moment for you. It actually reminds me of this card that I have in my deck, Wisdom of the Hidden Realms. And it comes up a lot in readings for people. There's like these two dragons of consciousness. One is the dragon of love and one is the dragon of fear. You can think about the different elements of our psyche as like team members behind these dragons. Which one are you consciously feeding every day? And that's where our boundaries have to come in. Am I feeding love right now, or am I feeding fear? And that doesn't mean that we have to bypass and ignore our fear. That's not what I'm saying. But how can we love even that inner villain part of ourselves, or our wounded inner child, or love ourselves more, or co-create with love to raise ourselves out of the funk that other team is trying to bring us in?
That's such a beautiful way to think about it and look at it. And, I loved what you said too about like the inner villain is also sort of trying to highlight something that needs healing, that needs to be looked at. And it's doing it in a really harsh way. But if if we can see it for what it is, as a tool to let go of those thoughts or work through those thoughts and do that with love. Like, can I love the inner bro who just, wants to say all these mean things to me? Can I have love and sympathy for where he's coming from inside of myself and know that it's not reality, it's just fear, like you said.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, we probably don't love that mean gymnastics coach that we had. We probably don't love that basketball teacher that made us run drills and was extra mean. But that doesn't mean we can't learn from them or change our relationship or grow through those circumstances. And the inner villain is just like that. It's like I said, this drill sergeant part of our consciousness that's just trying to toughen us up on a soul level so that we don't get hurt again like we have in the past. And so when you notice a thread of a similar theme coming up with your inner villain, ask yourself, what's the earliest time I actually remember feeling this way? What's my earliest memory of this theme or area of life being wounded? And that can give you really fertile information for where to start rewiring, loving yourself more, processing. And you don't have to do this work alone. Like, so many times we hear about these advanced concepts. It's actually advanced to rewire your inner villain and to have boundaries with yourself. And it's when it's such an internalized way of being for so long, it's actually really a brave thing to learn a new dance, to show up in a new way. And so you don't have to do that alone. There are professionals in the space to help you figure out how, because so many times we hear like, love yourself more, do this, do that, work on your inner villain, but we don't actually know how. But you don't have to know how because you're not a trained professional in the space, and there are trained professionals in the space. So if you need an extra dose of help, go for it. There are tools available for a reason.
Absolutely. And every step towards that, every efforting towards that, every intention towards healing it is a step along the path to doing it. Even the thought of like, I need to have boundaries with myself and stop letting this inner villain hurt me. that thought alone is part of the change. Even if it feels like, how do I do that? That you're even thinking about it is a step towards it. And in a year or 2 years or 5 years, you'll probably turn around and see like, I don't talk to myself like that like I used to. Like I have made that change.
I just saw while you were talking about that, this image of your future self hugging you and thanking you right now for the work you're doing, for the healing, for the awareness, for the evolution. Like you're making the scarier, harder choice, not the easier one. And I just see this strong, thriving you hugging you right now, thanking you for what you're doing.
I love that. I feel her. I'm hugging her
Yes.
back.
She's like, it's
that.
okay, girl. Everything's happening all at once and time isn't linear. And I'm over here from this area and like keep going. So I want to get into introducing our guest. We have the absolutely angelic and beautiful Krista Williams in the studio with us today. Krista is a co-founder of Almost 30, a global community and brand providing online learning and resources for navigating life's transitions. Speaking of Almost 30, the podcast is a top spirituality and wellness podcast reaching over 100 million downloads. She also is the co-creator of Morning Microdose, a daily dose of inspo, ranked top new podcast by Spotify. Krista leads global retreats, speaks all over the world, and is the visionary for Modern Tarot, which provides luxury tarot tools for modern life. Welcome to the incredible Krista Williams. So excited to be here with our guest, Krista. Welcome.
I am ready to hang. I feel like I've missed you since our dinner where we just laugh and have so much fun. So I've been looking forward to this. I feel so lucky that we get to do what we do and just be ourselves and talk about all these fun things. So I'm looking forward to it and I'm ready to rock.
Yay. I love that. And I feel the same way. I'm like, how lucky is it that I get to be a witch every day? I'm like, well, I'm going to work to talk about birth charts and connect with angels. It's like, wow, lucky, blessed, true abundance.
100%. It's like, I always think about that because I used to never feel abundant. I was like, even if I made a good amount of money or however much money, amount of money that I never dreamed was possible, I never felt abundant. And then I had to really think about, I'm like, okay, how do I define abundance? I define it as like deep, meaningful relationships, like being able to be myself. So I had to redefine what abundance was for me and really think about things like what you just said, where you're like, being able to be a witch all day, being able to like talk about spirituality and angels, like that helps you feel abundant. And so for anyone listening, whether they're doing what we do or something similar or not even at all, it's like, how can we find things in our life now that help us really feel into and be and exist in abundance, even if money might not be super abundant in our life, or even if we don't have an abundance of time or anything like that.
Yeah, true abundance is walking in alignment with what our heart asks for. And money is a tool for abundance, but it's not abundance by itself. It's hollow by itself. It's true abundance when we have the ability to honor our heart. But before we dive too deep in with you, first of all, I want to say, before we get into the questions that we ask all of our guests at the top, I want to give a personal testimony to just what a light you are and what a champion of women you are and love. And Krista is someone who I met at Lacey Phillips' baby shower, and I was doing little mini angel readings there. And at the time, I didn't have a very big following. Not many people knew about my work, and I was kind of, in the earlier stages. And it meant so much to me that without being asked or anything, you shared me on your Instagram, you added me to a list that you had of readers that you recommended, and it changed my career. It helped people find me. And it was just, you modeled for me what it is to help the next generation, what it is to be a true supportive force for other women in their power and their passions. And I've just always looked up to you so much in that way. And you are such an example of grace and kindness to me in all ways. So thank you for that.
Oh, I love you. Yeah. And in this scenario, it's like, we have to remember that you gave me something that day too. So it's not like I'm just doing you a favor and I'm shouting you out and I'm doing all these things. Like, you gave me a gift. You gave me a gift of getting to know my angels and guides in a way I had never known them before. I've had a frequency feeling, I've had a resonance with them, I'm very close to them, but being able to visualize them and really confirm what I had felt with you changed my life. Like the way that I engage with my guides and angels now is completely different. So I think our story and the story of this is really like, if you are truly in alignment, doing your soul's mission, which is what you are doing, and you are good at it. And what I love about your story is that you did readings for free for people. Like I just am obsessed with that because I feel like a lot of people go from, wanting to be in the corporate world and then wanting to read for, however much money right away. And I think because you had honed your skills and ability, when you got to the point where you were at Lacey's house and you were reading people like her friends, you were ready. Like you had had the skills and ability to be with women like us and read women like us and do a really great job. So it wasn't like I found you on a dumpster and was like, she's great. And like, did it. But it was like a natural thing where we both really benefited from what you give. But, I've never seen myself as someone that's been like, oh yeah, I'm like pro women or I'm like all about women or whatever. But it has been my life and my work to support and empower women. Yeah. But I've always felt like it's like the women that are always saying they empower women are sometimes the most toxic. So it's like the women that are just low key about it and just like, it's just part of who I am. Like, I don't need to like go around and make it my brand to be really supportive of women because it's just a part of me. But it really is in my nature to just really shout out and represent and really be grateful for the people that have changed my life.
It's so true. People who wear these shirts that are like innocent or angel, it's like that you're probably not that thing that's on your shirt. It's like the people that feel the need to label themselves as something probably aren't that thing. And the people who are just in their authentic frequency walk the walk and don't feel the need to slap a label on it.
Yes, I actually am someone, I like hate any labels. Like I don't want to be labeled in my human design. I don't want to be labeled in my astrology. I don't want to be labeled as a podcaster. I don't want to be labeled as a coach. Like I just, because then what happens is then people have an expectation of you for that thing. So if I was someone that was like, I champion women, I'm like really for women. And again, my life's work is women. Like it just is what it is. But if I'm saying that and promoting that, then I'm going to be held to a standard that I might not be able to hit for everyone. Then I might not respond to a DM from a woman who's like, hey, will you shout out my business? And I don't. And she's like, you're not championing women. So it's like such a fine line. And I just find myself just so adverse to any labels because of that fact. I don't want to be held to anyone else's standards or anyone else's like unconscious pedestal or something.
Yeah, it's like you don't need labels because people can judge you by your actions, not the label that you're giving. And that's actually very angelic because when people try to limit their angels by projecting human qualities onto them, like, oh, I have 5 angels and their names are Annabelle, Josh. It's like, no, they are limitless, unconditional love, and they're leading us to be the same. So don't trap yourself with labels. The ego tries to hold on to labels, but truly we are ineffable, like stardust that cannot be contained or shrunken down. And I feel like there's almost a selfishness in it or something there where we're trying to make ourselves more digestible or understandable to the world in a way that keeps us from being able to actually show up how we want to. It's like, yes, I'm an angelic oracle, but I'm also a comedy writer and I can be both. It's like, people hold on to that. And it's like bringing something up from me of my acting days where like I never got to go out for comedy because my look was like girl next door. And I was like, girls next door can be funny. It's like, I'm just so over labels.
Yes. And I think social media has a lot to do with it because it's like you have to define yourself by your Instagram bio or you have to be niched or you have to be consumable for people. They have to look at your page and understand who you are and what you're about within seconds. So I feel like so many people are like, okay, if I have these labels, then I know who I am and then people know who I am. And it's also like if you're not someone that's deeply engaged in the discovery of who you are in your life and you're not figuring out who you are, know thyself, then you can use labels as a shortcut to that. And so you can use like, oh, this is my star sign or this is my human design or this is my thing to like kind of get you to the point a little bit faster rather than using lived experience as your guide. And I'm not saying that any of this is bad. Like human design has helped me, astrology has helped me deeply, but I always just want to be mindful about when we're prioritizing that information over our own experience or over our intuition.
Yes, that's where we're giving our power away to these systems that are meant to help us, not tell us who we are, but give us reflection points. And that's where astrology, human design can become so egoic. It's like, well, my Mercury's in Scorpio, so sometimes I'm a bitch. It's like, no. It's not supposed to be excusing you for things like that. It's supposed to be showing you what's possible for your highest expression. And it's all self-reflection. And I always say, nothing in our birth chart, nothing in our human design is more important than who we choose to be moment to moment.
I could not love that more.
Yes. And so rewinding, ironically, to astrology, can you please tell our audience what your big three are?
My big tree. Okay, I'm a Pisces sun. I am a Sagittarius moon, and I'm a Virgo rising.
Love that. And how does your intuition show up for you?
My intuition is a knowing. I know things. I can't explain it. I just know. And it's been interesting to cultivate, more of my gifts as I've gotten older. But when you have a knowing versus like a seeing, like I think I would always perceive that seeing was the most superior, being able to see spirits or see ghosts or, see whatever colors. And it's really like I've just known things a lot in my whole life. So just knowing is what it's been, cognizance, right? Yeah, it's like it would be, I used to think like because I'm not seeing a spirit or ghost or I'm not seeing something happen, I'm not seeing God, I'm not seeing these things, that it's not as valuable or it doesn't mean as much if I'm not having this crazy experience. But in my life, I've just known many, many things. And now I've learned to trust that. Now I've learned to work with that. And now I've learned to enjoy the surprises that it brings. And now I've learned to really understand that oftentimes it only comes through if I'm comfortable, if I feel like I can trust that person, if I feel safe, if I feel like they are available and ready for it. And so it doesn't come through all the time, but when it does, it's so powerful. And I think that's something that if you were to really know me, I think the people that really, really know me well, the friends in my life, they would say like, that's something like I'm very psychic and that's not something I like am very public about or really talk about, but I do have a very psychic side and that's probably coming through with the Pisces.
Yeah. And it just is a reflection of what an old soul you are, because I always say claircognizance is the most advanced clair, because
my ego loves that.
Yes. The other clairs are what feed our claircognizance and our clairsentience. Those are the two that we don't really have anything to lean on but ourselves, our feeling and our knowing. The seeing, the hearing, the smelling, the tasting, those other experiences feed and contextualize the knowing and the feeling. They give us a little bit more to hold on to. But when you just have the knowing, it's so advanced because you can't trust your intuition if you don't fully trust yourself with claircognizance.
Wow. And that's, in my life, since when I've been oscillating in and out of trusting my intuition and trusting my gut and, having that connection, it's been something that has been easy to lose. And I'm curious how you feel about this, but in the moments in life where I've lost my connection to my intuition, oh my gosh, like there's nothing more heartbreaking. There's nothing more soul crushing. There's nothing more lonely than feeling like you don't have a connection to your intuition. It makes me emotional thinking about it just because that's such a beautiful part of our experience here on earth, is being connected to something and an aspect of us that knows, an aspect of us that is like with us for the ride, an aspect of us that we can always count on, we can always go to. And my intuition is like, having an intuition and a connection to it is one of my favorite aspects of being alive as a human on earth. Having it is the most fun part of this human experience. And that when you don't have a connection to your intuition, it's so heartbreaking.
And I think when we're in those moments where we feel disconnected from our intuition, it isn't that our guides have stepped away from us. It isn't that we are not able to connect. It's that we have denied our truth or something. Okay, it can be a couple things. One is that we've had to silence the whispers of our intuition to stay in circumstances that aren't aligned until we hit a rock bottom moment and we feel really lost and disconnected. But the other circumstance can be something outside of our control or outside of us. that just gets us into a place where we feel knocked off center, not connected to ourself, so that we can't really feel connected to our intuition, or because intuitive connection is very connected to the physical body, and it's a physiological process. Like, it's directly correlated to the nervous system speeding up, to our vibration raising so we can meet our guides halfway. Like, it's a process very connected to the body. And when we're feeling heavy in our body, when we're feeling like we've been going through something really intense or difficult, it's just really hard to connect in those times. And that's not to say that it's anyone's fault, or that definitely your guides are still with you. You just might not be able to be with them. And everything is temporary.
Yes.
That's not going to last forever. But in those moments, it can feel like it's going to last forever. And I've definitely been there myself. And I think when you're in that place, that is where the ego tries to come in and be like, well, I guess I'm not intuitive. I guess I'm not connected. I guess I'm not supported. And I feel intuitively like there's something coming up with forgiveness and grace towards yourself when you're in those time periods. And for me personally, when I felt most disconnected from my intuition was when I was staying in a toxic, abusive relationship that my intuition had been screaming at me for years that it wasn't right and that I should get out, and I didn't listen. And I hit a rock bottom moment where I felt so lost. I felt betrayed by my intuition, even though I didn't accept the invitation to listen to it. And I basically had to come into a deep place of sitting with myself. There was no escaping it, no trying to. I just was in this place of needing to really forgive myself, be kind to myself, and be patient with myself. And that's kind of the recipe for those moments, I think.
I couldn't agree more. And especially on the relationship thing. And you know what I was just kind of thinking about when you were talking about that? So what's happening when you're in that toxic relationship or situation where you're denying your intuition and that voice within? I think about a lot the origin of our disconnection from our intuition is not only existing in a world that doesn't support the unseen, it doesn't support us in our magic, it doesn't support the realms that like exist outside of the 3D, but it's also our parents. You know, when we're young, they're like telling us not to feel. They're like, don't be sad, don't be upset, don't be angry, don't be all these things. Our feelings are such a guide for our intuition. And then they're also just denying us like the truth of things. They're not being honest. A lot of times they didn't talk to us about things. We would have an intuition about their relationship or about going somewhere or doing something. And they're like, you have to do it. You have to listen just because, you know, like for so often, like we are not cultivated in our own power and our own intuitive gifts as a child. So it makes sense that we would go to a toxic relationship and then also do that because we're like, we are getting fed in the same way with our parents as like this person as the source of our love, as the source of our safety. And then of course I would deny my intuition. I did that with my parents. I did that my whole life. It makes total sense that I would do this. So yeah, it's just a natural state of being. But the more we can be connected to our intuition and the more we can be connected to that voice within, like the better life gets. But it's going to be usually a crunchy process to get there. You know, the times where I was awakening to the voice within and really connecting to her were some of the hardest. Like it brought me to my knees for the most part, all in my greatest good. But it's not like you listen to your intuition and it takes you to the gas station to buy a lottery ticket that you win. It's usually like it takes you to your knees and then it brings you up to like a better, more aligned place that's more you.
Absolutely. And I think going back to that idea of what we've inherited from our parents in terms of shutting down our intuitive connection, I think an essential part of healing the witch wound is looking at the witch wound that has been passed down from our grandparents, our great grandparents, our parents. And I think people who are mothers can really look at now who have children, ways that they speak about intuition or have fearful narratives around power or speaking up. And so I think the mother wound and the witch wound go really hand in hand because for women, our mother's voice becomes our inner voice about what's possible and what to look for in the world and who we are in some ways. And so I know you've done a lot of work on the mother wound. And as you've worked through that, have you found that it's enabled you to find your voice, to find your deeper intuitive connection through the process, and to find your inner witch as well.
Yeah, I love talking about the mother wound. So, the mother wound is not something that just women struggle with, men struggle with as well. And it's basically our larger relationship to the feminine in a patriarchal society and culture. So, how do we view women? How do we view the feminine? And for a lot of us, the relationship with our mother was really profound, whether it was really beautiful or really hard. The mother is the first relationship that we have in our life. It is our source of life. It is our source of nutrition. It is our source of every single thing. Whether we like it or not, we are recording from a brain perspective until the age of 7. So you're recording every single thing your mother is doing. You are watching her, recording her, observing her, how she talks about her body, how she is in relationship, how she feeds herself, how she nourishes herself, if she's working a lot, if she's not, if she's burning out, if she's not, if she's talking about women poorly, whatever. So we all are impacted by this. And a lot of the symptoms that I see that women have is women burning themselves out, women overfunctioning, women codependent, women not in their power, women that hate their bodies, women that are afraid of their power, and women that are afraid of their gifts and their intuition, and women that are not using their voices. You know, from a cultural perspective, like from a patriarchy perspective, we are very afraid of women that use their voice and afraid of women that are in their power. So I've seen throughout my journey working with women how many are afraid to use their voice. And what I'll say is, you know, in my life, I've lost my voice quite a bit. I was someone that grew up in a household with a narcissistic parent, and that meant that my worth was being quiet. My worth was serving them. My worth was self-erasure. My worth was being the parentified child. So I didn't have a voice. You would think that with the podcast that I had a voice from a young age, but I really didn't. I had to cultivate it from a young age, or from when I was in like high school to college. And then in my life, when I've lost my voice, it's really felt like I lost myself, whether that was in relationship or whether that was externally. And when we can really find that inner voice, that intuition, that soul, and then express that on the outside, it is just like everything changes. We change the relationship we have romantically with other women, with our power from a global scale. And so if we can look at the mother wound as a basis for understanding the relationship we have with the feminine, understanding the relationship with ourself, with our power, all those things I mentioned, then we can really unpack and unravel the ways in which we're just not really living up to our potential and living lives that we love.
That's so powerful. And that idea as our mother being a reflection of how we view the feminine overall is such an interesting place for reflection. I'm definitely going to reflect on that myself. You're bringing up a lot about the voice, which brings me to the throat chakra, which is a really important place for intuitive connection and just for living our best life. And the throat chakra is so important because it's right between the heart and the third eye. And the throat is so much about speaking our truth, communication, of course, but also being radically honest with ourselves. And I think that if we cannot be radically honest with the truth of what we need, what we truly want, what really is, if we're constantly lying to ourselves or playing judge and jury over our truth, that is when we cannot connect to our intuition. And that is when we start to get lost. And what I see in my reading so often is that people are in this storm of feeling lost and confused and in transition. And the eye of the storm is always, always, always radical honesty. And it's right there in your throat chakra. And so I think connecting to the voice, connecting to your truth is a practice, and we get really good at what we practice, and not everybody is practiced in what do I really want? How do I really feel? What is my truth? And I know you do a lot of work on the throat chakra and remembering your voice. And I'm wondering, what would you advise for somebody who maybe doesn't even know what their truth is or how to start connecting to that?
What I will say is that there's one aspect of this that most people know what the truth is, but they're too scared to say it or admit it. And they are afraid that if they say the truth, that they have to do something about it. So a lot of times I'll work with people and they will know the truth of what they want and what they desire, but they don't have the confidence yet to speak it, or they feel like if I say, I'm going to leave this relationship or marriage, then that means that they have to take the next step or action. So a lot of times it can be really beautiful to just sit in a place of either honest confusion. I always say having honest confusion over fake clarity is such an amazing thing. Just being truthfully like, I'm actually really confused right now, truthfully, rather than saying like, oh, I know this or I know that, like just being honest about where you're at. But then there's also, most people know the truth intuitively, or they're living their life by numbing or distracting or doing all the things to not see the truth. So they're finding all the things to like avoid from being in the truth. But when we can actually like look at the truth, that's so much of the work. You know, when we talk about shadow work, it's like bringing the shadow to the light, bringing the truth to the light. Like the truth is that I want to leave this relationship. The truth, but I don't know how. The truth is that I am unhappy in this job and I don't know what to do next. You know, if we can just start with the admittance of how we feel and be honest about how we feel, it can get so far. But for so many of us, that's a very scary thing. You know, it's like a very scary thing. And most people are used to living in a numbness and a general level of dissatisfaction with their life, where they feel like it's very normal to hate their life, or they feel like it's normal to hate their job, or they feel like it's normal to hate themselves and their relationship. And I've been that at different periods in my life. You know, I thought it was normal to just like commiserate about hating my job all day, or commiserate about how my relationship sucked all day. And it's a way of being. But if you really want change in your life, and if you really want to live a life that you love, and if you really want to do the thing that you came here to do, you have to be honest with yourself. And the way that we can do that, how we can start, is by being honest in micro moments. So say an example, you're with a bunch of girlfriends and they're like, hey, where do you guys want to go for dinner? And normally you'd be like, you know, I don't care, whatever, I don't mind, I'm flexible. But you're actually not. You're actually vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free. You actually only eat fish once a week, da 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 da. You just saying in that moment, actually, I have a preference and this is where I'd want to go, is an act of honesty. You, when you're at work, if someone's like, hey, do you want to do this or do that? No, I'm flexible, I'm a team player, whatever. You actually having a preference and being honest about it is huge. Hey, what do you want for, you know, where do you want to go this weekend? This is where I want to go. This is where I want to do. So finding and cultivating a comfort with your honesty in micro moments will help you move to the bigger moments of honesty. I think also too, having relationships, whether it's with a therapist or friends, where you can be in the exploration in a non-judgmental portal is really powerful. So, you know, when I was going through my divorce, which happened in the last year or so, I remember being in an exploratory portal because I wasn't sure if I wanted to leave the relationship, and, you know, kind of talking about it, going up and down and all around. It hadn't hit yet that I wanted to leave the relationship. And I remember talking about it, and I had this friend that was like, well, why don't you just get divorced? Why don't you just end the relationship? And I wasn't there yet I was not fully there yet. So it really robbed me of that exploration and that curiosity of that portal. And so when we have relationships and people that are in the exploration phase of their truth, really allowing them to be there and go there, but also if they say the truth, being non-judgmental about it. So if someone's like, yeah, I actually, you know, I cheated on my partner. It's like, okay, you know, like how can I be non-judgmental to you? Because that's what I would want, to give people more freedom and flexibility on sharing their truth more often. Because when we are met with judgment or shame or guilt, we're never going to want to be honest again. And if people aren't honest with us, then, you know, what kind of relationships are we even in?
Yeah. And if we expect our friends or loved ones to only receive our love, care, space, encouragement, if they only show up a particular way, that's not real love or real friendship.
Yes, I'm so about that. I even had one of my girlfriends who I'm really close with. She's an internal processor with things when she's going through hard times. I am too. And I remember her going through it, and she kind of like hid and was like, she was hard to get in touch with. And she's like, I was just going through it. You know, I'm better now. And I'm like, you're not giving me the opportunity as your friend to be a friend to you, like an actual friend.
Yes.
Because you're only giving me the opportunity to be your friend when you feel good and when you feel like life is going well and you feel like you're performing at your best and you're, you know, that perfect version of you. But like real friendship and relationships is actually being friends with someone through the hard times, through the crunchiness, and through the times when you feel like you don't want to be seen, you don't want to be loved. It's like, how can I love you when like you feel like you're not worthy of love?
Yeah. And that really is true love. It's letting people see you in every single state. And that reprograms your inner child, your subconscious, that you're worthy of love however you show up. When you, so many of the things that we feel so scared to do is exactly what our subconscious needs to see that we're safe to do. So I love that so much. And I also really love going back to the throat chakra and radical honesty, how you're saying break it down into micro moments, because I think that's where people get really overwhelmed, being like, well, if this isn't the truth, then what is? And I need to know what my 5-year plan is, and I need to know where I'm going and what's going to happen. But in reality, being powerful is a practice. And if you didn't start practicing from an early age, if you maybe witnessed that mother wound or dynamics around feminine energy not feeling safe to be in power, it's going to take those micro moments that feel so scary to break out of people pleasing, perfectionism, shape shifting, and saying your actual truth. But here's the thing. If you don't speak your truth, who the heck will? And you can know right away if someone is right for you romantically, friendship wise, etc., if you speak your truth and they care enough to receive it. And if anything you lose from speaking your truth was never meant to be yours, you had to show up as an inauthentic self to keep it. And so never be afraid to speak your truth, because it's the fastest way to shift your life into alignment with what's actually meant for you.
I completely agree. I love that point about speaking your truth in relationships. And I'll just add this caveat that, in my relationship with Lindsay, so Lindsay's my podcast co-host. She's my best friend, and she's really been the sandbox for me to experiment with intimacy in relationships. And she's really been my greatest teacher. And what we do in our relationship when we are speaking our truth, we make sure that we're speaking the actual truth. And when I say the actual truth, it's not a wounded child responding. It's not a defensive version of me. It's not a cruel, mean girl in me. We have various aspects of ourselves. So oftentimes people can assume speaking your truth is when you're being cutting, a bully, you're being mean, you're saying something rude. It's like there is an unprocessed way that people will use the phrase speaking your truth. And actually, a lot of times in relationship, the truth is that really hurt my feelings. When you said that, like, it just really hurt. Like, I love you so much. And I would have really loved if you would have said this to me. I would have really loved to see you support me in this way. And I'm curious what we can do in the future. That is speaking your truth in a way that can be processed and metabolized by that person, and really is the truth. Because I had a situation with friends years ago where there was a woman that was like, I just need to speak my truth. You are doing this. You are like this. You are like that. You are all these things. And that's your truth as a projection and an unprocessed truth that you're sharing with me. It might be how you feel, but it's not really the actual truth. So I do think that in relationships, we have to approach them with tender care. Have these relationships, of course, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be processed all the time. Like, you can make mistakes, but doing our best to excavate on our own and get clear on how we feel, and then bring it to people that we love in truth, in a kind way, will serve us so well.
I love that so much. And it's like there is a distinction between your emotional experience and your truth.
Yes.
And the truth has something ineffable, spiritual, connected to the higher self with it. It's that Sagittarius energy. We both have Sag moons, and Sagittarius is the sign of truth at all costs, looking for truth. Gemini is the sign of gathering wisdom, communicating, sharing ideas. And then Sagittarius adds the alchemical process of wisdom to that to find the truth. And so I always think about things through the polarity and the spectrum that astrology points out to us. It's like a roadmap right there for us. And it's such an interesting idea that it might take practice knowing what your truth is, but not approaching this work from a place of blame or projection. Or I just love everything that you said. And I think an effective tool for that is when you're in that sandbox with the person that you care about. You care about their truth. You care about their feelings. You're open and you genuinely want to resolve whatever's in front of you, work through whatever's in front of you, which truly is so beautiful. And that is true love and vulnerability and intimacy. when you're in that place, I think a good way to approach it is, instead of saying, you did this, this is what happened, you did that, you made me feel this way, I think instead saying, this is what happened through my perspective. This is how it made me feel. Was that your intention, or what was your experience? Like, instead of throwing everything at them that's their fault, getting really curious about their experience, their truth, and getting greater clarity will only help the situation, instead of it all being accusations.
Yeah, I love that so much. And just to build on that, some of the things like tactically that people can do. So, two of the phrases that I love in those times of conflict and relationship, the first one is, help me to see the truth. Help me to know the truth. So you just say to someone like, help me to see the truth. I feel like you're really disrespecting me by showing up late to these meetings. Like, help me to see the truth. And that means basically help me to see from your perspective what's going on. I'm giving you the opportunity to tell me that what I'm perceiving is not here. Another phrase that I love is the story that I'm telling myself. So if I was in a situation with Lindsay, I would say, the story that I'm telling myself is that you don't care about the business as much as me. And the reason that I feel like I have that story is because of X, Y, and Z. What's your perception? So just kind of like taking it up and just being like, this isn't true, what I'm feeling, what I'm seeing. It's a story that is based on my experiences that have led me here to perceive this to be happening. Because that's what we have to remember. Because what I perceive to be happening in the relationship is fully because of my background, my experiences, my trauma, past relationships. We have to recognize that how we experience relationships is totally different than everyone else. Yes. Other people don't see or experience what we feel. And then the third thing that I love to do in relationships is have security statements. So security statements are so beautiful. And Lindsay was actually the one that helped me to figure out how to use these. So I remember I used to approach my romantic relationships and conversations and be like, you're really doing this and you're doing that and all these things, and just felt like I had to like rattle off all the issues that I had, all my beef. I had to communicate where they were wrong and all that. And she helped me to say, at the beginning, it's like validating the relationship and how important it is. So, I love you so much. Like, you've been such an amazing friend to me, and, you're usually really there for me. So it felt like this time when you didn't show up for me, like it just felt like it hurt. It felt like it really hurt me. And when you can tell someone like, I love you so much, like you're usually someone that does this, or, I don't usually experience this from you. Like, they are going to respond to you completely different. Please DM me if you try this and it does not work. I will give you money, because this will completely transform the way people approach you. So security statements, and then using the phrases, the story I'm telling myself, and help me to see the truth can be really helpful.
I love that so much. And security statements, I love that phrase. And I love Lindsay too. Shout out to Lindsay. She's awesome. I love the phrase security statements because immediately it relaxes you. It takes you away from a defensive position or a scared position or an activated position, and brings you back to being on the same team. It's like when you're talking about your truth with people you care about, you're on the same team. And something my husband said as a security statement before I had that language was, my love, we have a lifetime to figure this out. We have a lifetime to figure this out together. I know, he really is the best. And that made me feel so comforted because, of course, every couple has their issues and different backgrounds and what they expect and how they want to be loved. And you can show up in a way that makes the other person feel XYZ, not seen, not heard. And I just remember being so upset and being like, I feel like I'm dropping the ball and I'm not doing a good job being wife. And before we even got into the conversation, he just said that security statement of, we have our whole life to figure this out. And it was such a nice reframe to be like, this isn't just a happily ever after situation. We're constantly going to be putting in the work to make sure that we're communicating, to make sure that we are growing together and that we're hearing each other. And so I think that's a security statement that really stuck out to me and touched my heart and got us back on the same page and on the same team. And something else I wanted to say is that, especially in love life, but in every area of life, I find that one of the most harmful structures of thought is if-then statements. because they are purely based on projection and how we feel. And so if he cared about me, he would text me goodnight. If he wanted to move further with me, he would do XYZ. These are the statements that block truth. That I love what you said about like, show me the truth of the situation. That's so beautiful. And when we fill in the blanks with our own reasoning, that's how we drive ourselves crazy. And that's the enemy of truth and clear communication. And so those if then statements, if she cared about this job, then she would show up this way. And so I think watch out for falling in that trap, because that's where you're out of truth. Truth, when it comes to our relationships, it exists in the middle of both of our experiences. And if then statements are only taking you your own way.
100%. Yeah, I love that.
I want to ask you, because you're someone who is so kind, so beautiful inside out, so accomplished, so smart. It's like you have everything going for you. And on top of that, you're constantly doing the work. You're walking the walk, not just talking the talk. You're always checking in with yourself. You're always working on showing up as your most authentic and light-filled self. And that's so beautiful. And when it comes to the dating world, that can be sometimes a lonely place to find a partner who's actually a mirror to that, not someone who will only take and take and take from your light. And so as you're navigating the dating world, how have you been fusing and using all of this throat chakra work, your intuitive connection? And do you find that this time around you're navigating it a completely different way?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I have to have navigated differently, because I think the last time I've been in a relationship since I was 15, just back to back long-term relationships.
Yeah.
My last relationship was 10 years. So I've not really dated in this way at all. So I'm completely new to the game, completely re-experiencing this. And I'm so grateful to be doing it at this age and with this confidence and with this way of being, because it just makes it so much more fun and interesting, and I can use it as an experiment. So when I think about using my intuition in dating, it's been really beautiful, because I've been guided to these relationships that have been really beautiful soul contracts that have really just shown me aspects of myself or way of being that have supported me. But also, at times been heartbreaking and painful. But I think there was parts of the dating where I've been out of the game. So I was listening to other people. So an example, there was this person that I went on 2 dates with, and it was good, but it was kind of the second date made me uncomfortable. And I remember, my friends were like, just go, like, feel it out. I didn't like my husband for a while, or you got to give people a chance. I always say to do 3 dates, whatever. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. Like, you guys are probably right. I haven't dated. Like, let me try this new idea. So I went on a 3rd date with this man. It was traumatizing. It was just horrible, disgusting, so bad. Funny and sad at the same time. One of those where I'm like, this is the funniest thing that's ever happened to me. And also this is traumatic. But I just knew, and I wasn't listening to my intuition. I wasn't listening to my gut. I was listening to what everyone else was telling me, what everyone else said I should be doing, how everyone else told me I should be approaching dating. And I was like, I am not everyone else. Like, everyone else can do their thing. I'm going to do my thing. And I've always known. I know when I meet someone if there's a connection. I know when I meet someone if this is someone that I want to get to know more. Like, the people that I have had relationships with since my marriage, I've known right away, and it's been incredibly beautiful, and it's just been something that flowed really naturally. So my intuition is such a guide, and it's been such an amazing aspect. But I think where a lot of people get stuck is where they get the fear that is guiding instead of their intuition. So I'm never going to be married. I'm never going to be in a relationship, or, the clock is ticking. All of these things are overriding women's natural intuition and their natural guide and compass to things. It could also be that their intuition is telling them, hey, this guy, he's not like the hottest guy, but he makes me feel really good. And I actually really like him. And he's actually really mentally stimulating. But we have a part of our mind that's not the intuition that's like, no, he's not hot enough. He's not making enough money. He's not all of the things the ego wants. So to find love is to be connected to your intuition, and your partner should be the biggest support of your connection to your intuition. And when we think about the voice as it relates to this, oh my goodness, it has been such a mirror for me, because what I was noticing And this is where I love mindfulness and I love being a witness to myself. I love watching and observing myself and the way that I operate in the world. I would go on dates and I would notice, okay, he likes to talk about this thing. I'm going to keep talking about that, or I'm going to ask him questions about that, or okay, I noticed he doesn't like when people talk about this. I'm not going to say this thing because I think he's not going to like that. I was completely adjusting my voice. I was not saying things that I felt. I was making the conversation about them. I was holding back. I was facilitating an experience for them, but not an experience for me. I was not being myself. I was being who I thought they wanted me to be. And so for women, like, we can really use a date example or even online dating or texting or whatever as a great guide for where we're holding back our voice and where we're self-censoring and where we feel like we need to be someone in this world or in this life to be loved. So for me, in that way, I felt like I needed to be cool, witty, funny to be loved. And I would hide the deep spiritual part of me from men. I wouldn't show them that aspect of me. And so I was really denying them this opportunity to meet the whole me, but I was also really showing where I have this fear of my bigness in my life. So I'm so grateful for this dating because it's shown me so much about myself and has helped me connect more deeply to my intuition and my voice.
I love that so much. And when we are just showing up the way that we think they want us to show up, then we're left with a partner who is so happy and lit up and connected to us, and we feel so alone and unseen,
Yeah.
So I love what you said too about the micro moments of following your intuition and how that stems from love and those fearful narratives of, well, if I don't do this, then I'll never be married. And if I don't give this a chance, then, maybe I'll never meet someone that I kind of like again, or whatever it is. And when it comes to attracting love and a soulmate connection, love attracts love. In the micro moments, ask yourself, am I texting this person because I'm scared that if I don't, they won't text me and it will fizzle out? Or are you texting that person because you genuinely want to and it feels exciting and like a yes to connect with them? Something as simple as that. Am I not telling them something deeper about myself because I'm scared that it will be too much for them? Or am I actually feeling safe and supported enough to go deeper with them? So in those micro moments that seem like they don't matter, they actually matter so much because you're setting up the energetic pattern of how safe you feel to navigate attracting love through love instead of fear and control. And with the throat chakra piece and speaking your truth in dating, that's where I think online dating is so valuable. The stakes are so low. Those aren't even real people yet. They're just the ideas of people. Until you meet them in real life, you don't know. That could be like 3 ferrets standing on each other's shoulders in a trench coat with a Bumble account. Like, you have no idea who that actually is. The stakes are so low. And so I think with online dating, what I used it as when I was in that space was like the platform where I could just unapologetically be my full self. And I was like, if I can just text these people exactly what I want to express who I really am, that's going to be a great practice arena for when I'm face to face with somebody that I actually care about and the stakes are a little higher. And so I think if anything else, use online dating as a place for just clear, open throat chakra work.
I love that. I think that's so genius. It's like taking off the expectations, it's like just practice it with low stakes. I love that.
Yeah. And I think it's funny too, because online dating is such a trip. And, I did meet my husband on Bumble. I got like the clear intuitive download that that it was the year for me to connect with him. And it can seem so unsexy, but I kind of treated it just like I wanted anything else that I wanted in my life. Like, I feel with love and relationships, sometimes there's this feeling like of fatedness and that it has to come about in this crazy magical way. But in reality, any way you meet your partner out of 10 billion people in the world is going to be crazy and magical that you even found a way to get to each other. So I think magic can happen through technology. Absolutely. But I had this idea in my head of like not getting invested and swept up in the story. And like, I used to go on bad first dates and like come home and cry and be like, this means
Yes.
I'll never find anyone. I've never felt more lonely. Like, I remember this first date where I left early to go buy oatmeal at Whole Foods, and I was crying in the oatmeal aisle that I would rather be there than on a date.
That's a sitcom.
I know. And so I got to a place where I had emotional boundaries, where I was like, I'm not
Yes.
falling into these if-then statements, where I get my
Yes.
hopes up about people that I'm meeting online, where I say, if this date doesn't go well, then I will never meet someone. Like, really watch out for those narratives. They're very sneaky. And I got to a place where I was almost treating it like job interviews. I know that's so not sexy,
Nope.
but I was like, this is a numbers game, baby. I was like, this is nothing about me, my lovability, my desirability. This is just a numbers game, and I'm going to give my angels momentum to work with. I am going to put myself out there. I'm going to try to meet as many people as possible because I feel my time is now, and I'm not going to go on an emotional roller coaster with it, but I'm going to create momentum, and I'm going to shift it to the same way I go after anything else I want in my life.
Giving your angels momentum to work with is like hitting me at a cellular level. I think that is so powerful. I think that is so real. And yeah, I just love that. I think it's the removing the story and removing the emotion around it. You know, just be like, again, that guy that I went on the date with was a fucking creep. And me in my 20s would have been like, oh my God, what was I wearing that made him say that? What did I do that attracted him? You know, and now I'm just like, none of my business, not my problem. Means nothing about me. This is the thing in our world. It's like, it means everything about you and it means nothing. So in this case, I'm just like, means nothing about me. Everything about him has nothing to do with me, but you kind of have to be like that in dating to allow yourself to work through it in a way that's like healthy for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think in the spiritual world, we can clip our own wings sometimes by staying attached to the way it has to look like or has to show up, or again, just give your angels that momentum to work with. I also wanted to ask you in the dating journey, because I know that you've been sober curious and going on that journey, and how has that affected the dating path? Because I know for so many people, it's like alcohol, getting loose, going on a date are so hand in hand. And has that expedited your intuitive knowing about people?
Yeah. So the sober curious journey. So I stopped drinking when I was 26. I was living in Chicago. I've always been intuitive my whole life. I never felt good drinking. And so it was the first thing that I did that was like, this doesn't make sense, but I'm literally listening to my intuition to stop drinking. No one else was sober curious at this time. It was not normal. People are now stopping drinking. It is now sober curious as a trend. I've been doing this for a long time. And so I haven't really drank since. It's been something that has been so supportive of my life and my relationships and everything, my health. And dating now, though, I will say I have to give you guys your roses, because I before was like, guys, you know, be yourself, like go on dates where you're on walks or working out. It's definitely harder to date when you're sober. I will give you that. Like, and now, but now I've always been sober curious. So now actually, if I go on dates where I feel like it and it feels good, I will have a drink and I'll enjoy it and I'll be in the vibe of it. I won't have more than that. And I'll kind of loosen the restriction on it. So I have to say, like, I'm not getting drunk. I'm not overdoing it. I'm checking in with my body, making sure I feel safe with them, seeing if it adds to the moment rather than takes away, and seeing if I'm doing it to like support my experience and support the fun rather than like as a way to numb or check out. So just being in right relationship with it is super powerful for dating. But it is like, there's nothing like having a glass of wine across the table from someone that you're just meeting and being like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? Like, what kind of magic is going to, like, what are we co-creating? Like, why are you here? Why am I here? Like, how did our souls bring us to this place? And just like swirling a little glass of wine, it can be fun. So I've loosened the reins on the drinking a little bit. I give myself permission. I think, you know, as a last thing, giving myself tons of years of reestablishing that like being sober feels good for me. allowed me to kind of move to this place of more flexibility.
I love that. And we're fluid beings. We're never meant to show up one way for the rest of our life. And maybe that sober journey is what you needed at that time period. And now you're at this place where you have done the work. You're super tapped in with yourself, your boundaries, your voice, your truth. And alcohol can be an amplifier instead of a detractor in the right situations. And it's neutral, just like everything else. And so I want to talk about your body transformation and the way you have truly transformed from the inside out. And you're just glowing differently these days. And I know you have a metamorphosis workshop coming up all about supporting that inner world to outer world transformation. And I think that's so powerful because so many women go through life at war with their bodies and trying to work from the outside in. So can you talk a little bit about that transformation and what you would say to those people?
Yeah. So, at a high level, I'm someone that always struggled with my body. I always felt like I needed to be thinner. I needed to look a certain way. I had to be perfect. I went on every diet. I did everything under the sun to look differently than what I did. I was up, 30 pounds. I was down 30 pounds. It was just kind of my path and journey. A lot of that stems from the mother wound. So, if we go back to the mother wound, that's how my mother saw her body. That's how I saw women in their bodies. So it was really mother wound affected. But after my divorce, I really just let go of the feeling and desire of needing to change myself. And I really found true self-acceptance through the work that I did through internal family systems and the mother wound work. And I realized that in order to transform my body, I had to accept it fully. And for someone that struggles with their body, that is so challenging. But I was finally able to get to a point where whatever weight I was at, I was going to accept it. I was going to finally be at peace with the voices in my head that told me I wasn't enough, with the prison that I had been in. When we talk about being honest, I kept myself in a prison. You have to weigh this, you have to count this calorie, do this thing, da 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 da. And so I finally just accepted myself for who I was. And I also stopped hiding. In the relationship I was in, I was hiding. I was out of my authenticity. I was repressing my voice. I was holding back. I was not tuned into my body or my sexuality. And I was really shut down. I was really in a place of unalignment and toxicity. And so getting out of that too really allowed me to sort of get out of this cocoon that I was in. It allowed me to transform and metamorphosize, which is, my program Metamorphosis, which is a coaching program to walk people through my transformation. But I never thought I'd be someone that would be talking about the body or the transformation. But when I got to this point where even though my body has transformed, I feel satisfied. And this is the thing where before in my journey, I would be the thinnest I ever was. I've been thinner than I am today. I've looked better than I have today, whatever. I still wasn't happy. I still wanted more. I still wanted to change. I still was not satisfied. At this point in my life, I'm so satisfied with my body, where I'm at, how I feel, how I look, how I'm expressing, how I'm all of these things. And it was really starting with the acceptance, and then also, aspects of my transformation journey, like the voice and the mother wound. So in the program Metamorphosis, I really just want to support people in freeing themselves from that inner critic voice, from that voice that takes over, that just consumes you, that is like so focused on the body, to allow them to accept themselves and feel at home with who they are.
I love that so, so much. And it's just an interesting synchronicity as a Virgo rising. Virgo risings are the hardest on themselves when it comes to the body, because Virgo is so hyper aware of the body. And then rising is how everyone sees you, how you show up in the world. So for the fellow Virgo risings out there, there is a hyper fixation on body, but there's also a deeper invitation for healing and helping heal others through the process. So Virgo is co-ruled by Chiron, which is the wounded healer who heals themselves so that they can heal the world. So I just feel like how you've gone through that is just such a beautiful alchemical process. And we all have different wounds in different areas of awareness, and it's what we do with them and how we work with them and how we love ourselves through them. And so that sounds so beautiful. And in this society, who hasn't felt bad about their body? Who hasn't felt like they wanted to focus from the outside in? There's so many messages everywhere. And so this coaching program is exactly what the world needs. One of the last things that I want to talk to you about is the empath experience. So many of our listeners identify as an empath, have their emotional dial super turned up, are always checking in with how everyone else feels. And sometimes when you're an empath out of balance, you can feel like the world is just pushing you in every direction and you're getting hit off every, like, bouncing from wall to wall. And I know you identify as an empath. You've gone through a really powerful journey of really realizing that that empath nature was your true superpower. And I'm wondering if you have any tips for the empaths out there who want to start feeling more in their power.
I'm someone that, didn't really identify as an empath for most of my life because I felt like being an empath meant I was weak. Being an empath meant I was a pushover. Being an empath was like I was crying all the time. But really, at my essence and core, I'm someone that's super soft, super emotional, deeply empathetic, codependent, and really affected by my surroundings, really affected by energies and things around me. And for most of my life, I was in situations and circumstances where I would be completely overtaken by the energy of the room, by the energy of the people, by the energy of the situations, and I would lose myself. I really didn't find and discover my center until I worked on my sensitivity, until I really tapped into that. And my perception and belief is that people that are empaths are the starseeds. People that are empaths are the angels. People that are empaths are the people that come to earth as these like soul beings with this beautiful, sensitive, soft frequency that is like so special and incredible. And many of them give their power away. Most empaths are not in their power because they give it away to other people. And empaths, when they're in their power and in their heart and in their truth, can change the world. And I want for all empaths that are deeply sensitive feelers to be able to feel what it feels like to feel their own energy and essence. For so long, I did not know what my own energy felt like. If someone would say, "How are you?" I'd be like, "Who's me?" Like, I'd be like, "What do you mean me?" Like, I'd be like, "I'm invisible. What? You can't see me. Like, what? How are you?" Like, I wouldn't even know who like, it was so hard for me to be like, I'm a body and I'm a person and I'm here because I'm so in everyone else's business. So once I was able to feel my essence, like that soul aspect of me, that taste in my mouth when I'm being myself, my unique blueprint experienced on earth, my whole life changed. And so I do a retreat every year called True Essence, and it's in Ibiza, which is such a beautiful, soft, feminine, galactic space at Six Senses. And during the week, we reconnect people to their true essence. We really help empaths discover their superpowers, their sensitivity. So that's another aspect of my work that I like to bring through just because it's really impacted my life so much.
Yes, that's so powerful. And I think empaths also incarnate into the exact circumstances they need to learn to not heal everyone around them, but to heal themselves and learn the structure to protect their own light. I think that's the paradox of the quote unquote light worker, which, sometimes terminology doesn't resonate with me as much, but I guess light worker is fine. But the idea of that is not necessarily healing everyone else, giving everyone else advice, but creating the boundaries needed to protect and foster and grow your own light. And so I think that's so, so beautiful.
Yeah, I know for all my sensitives, like I just want you to feel your own power and have your own experience in life because your soul came here to have your own experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And the world needs you. The world needs more empaths. Our society is so set up to reward the narcissists, to reward the people who are all about themselves and greed and pushing other people under the bus. And the sensitives get lost in the wayside, get chronic illness, trying to hold everything. It's like, it's a tough world. We need extra tools as empaths. And the world needs you. So thank you for that, Krista. I think that's really beautiful. Thank you so, so much for joining us today on Magic Hour. Where can everybody find you?
I'm on Instagram at It's Krista. It's ITSKRISTA. It's Krista. And then it's Krista.com for True Essence, the retreat or metamorphosis, the program. And then Almost 30 Podcast is my podcast that I do with my best friend on spirituality and wellness. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much for being here. And we will link everything in the show notes for people to find you easier. And I hope that you have a magical rest of your day. A beautiful interview with Krista Williams, the one and only. I'm so, so grateful to have her as a friend and also just a light in this world. And now we're moving into Sitting with Spirit, which is the weekly segment where we sit with Spirit and share the messages that want to come through for the collective. As always, please take what resonates with you and leave the rest. Resonance is our body letting us know in a full body yes way that we were meant for that message. And if the message isn't for you, that's okay. Don't try to make it fit. Use it as an exercise in spiritual discernment of telling yourself what is for you and what's not. So starting off, I got this nudge to share about a way that our intuition speaks to us that many people don't recognize as actually intuition. And so earlier today, I was meditating before a client session. I started my day in like a really good mood, did everything I needed to support myself, my supplements, my smoothie, all of my things. I felt really good. And then right before the session, I started thinking about a painful dynamic I have with a family member out of nowhere. And I felt this resentment coming up so deeply. And I was thinking, oh, why is this coming up? Like, I've been happy all day. I've been in a good mental place about this. Like, why is this coming up for me? And that's when I realized that it was coming up for me because it was relevant to the client. My angels and guides were using my own memories, experiences, dynamics as a strong example for what she's navigating in her life. So sometimes our guides, when you get a seemingly quote unquote random burst of a strong emotion or a memory that you had no reason for that to pop into your head, we can think that it's coincidental, when in reality, it's our guides directing our consciousness to something we need to look at for a reason. So I went into that session and I said, hey, I feel like, do you have a relationship with a parent figure that you hold a lot of resentment to, a parent figure that has let you down? And she said, yes. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today is my relationship with my mother, who I resent and who has let me down. And if I sat in meditation and was like, shut up, shut up, shut up to myself and was saying, I don't want to think about this right now. I want to be here for her, I would miss what was coming through. So when we create sacred containers for connection and we are in those containers, don't judge the information, because everything that comes through when you're in a sacred container to receive comes through for a reason. So if a random thought pops into your head, a random memory, something like that, just write it down, keep it for your consideration. If you're doing personal divination work, know that it came up for a reason. And sometimes our intuitive hits look like these seemingly irrational emotional experiences when in reality they were intentionally planted there. So it's not to say that we can't have a stray thought that tries to take us out of our intuitive processes. That's not what I'm saying at all. And that can happen. But what I'm also saying is stay open for the idea of them using your own experiences as a shorthand for you to where they want to direct your consciousness, whether it's in your own healing journey or someone else's. So I just really I want to expand your idea of what's possible when it comes to how intuition speaks to us. And that's a really important one that doesn't really get talked about a lot, which is, our own experiences and them bringing that to the forefront of our consciousness. So when I was sitting in the power and starting to open up to spirit, I got a really surprising message. And those are my favorite kinds when I'm like, okay, this could not have been me because this was really surprising and I don't know where this came from. But the message was making friends with the Grim Reaper. And that the Grim Reaper, which is this historically very scary symbol of death and endings, everything about this figure has been programmed to be so scary, so final, so painful, so grief-filled. And that can be true. But the message here is that the Grim Reaper also works for us, helping us release, let go, and die away of the things that are ultimately not helping us in the long run. And everything about being a human, which every single person feels this way, is scary to let go, scary to be in the in-between. And death itself, death, endings, release, all of those Scorpio themes that as a Scorpio sun, I shine my light on, they're really uncomfortable. And we try to run from the Grim Reaper. We try to hide from the Grim Reaper. But what if we shifted into the Grim Reaper as a form of guide that we can actually work with and say, please take what isn't for my highest good. Please let it go. And how can we think of the Grim Reaper as a friend, someone who realizes we can't hold it all forever? Everything is temporary, no matter what it is. And the Grim Reaper is a necessary part of the death and rebirth cycle. And without the death part, there can never be a rebirth into something more aligned, authentic, powerful, what needs to be. And that can be really hard, especially in the case of something that you really didn't want to lose, grief that feels so unfair or out of control. But it's not for our highest good to stay in that place of what if or out of control. And speaking as someone personally who has gone through so much grief, as everyone does in their human experience, there was just this full body resonance of the Grim Reaper as a friend and making friends with the Grim Reaper. So that's something to just think about. And I know it can be really hard to think of the Grim Reaper as a friend when it comes to death. And again, so many times in the spiritual world, we try to wrap everything up in a neat bow, and it's just not possible because of the diversity of experience. But take this message if it resonates for you, because of course there are tragic deaths, untimely deaths, time that it really doesn't feel like it was for us to lose something, and I'm completely honoring that. What I'm talking about here with this idea of the Grim Reaper, making friends with it, is the things that we deep down know need to go, but there's also an element of death being so misjudged by our society as this finality, this ending, this losing something forever, when in reality, matter can neither be created nor destroyed, and it's continuing on in a new form. And death, for the people who are suffering in their physical body, is actually a release, a gift, an ability for them to shed the skin that has been torturing them. And it's oftentimes, well, every time, harder on the people left behind on earth than it is for the person passing. The Grim Reaper is indeed their friend in the end when they cross over, because there's no pain. It's all back to spirit, back to oneness, back to unconditional love, which is a transition much more graceful and fluid than staying in a suffering physical body. So this idea of the Grim Reaper as our friend is just a way to reflect, to think about endings in a different way as a society that is so scared of endings. And I get that. I really, really get that. But in many ways, death is actually the magic. It's the antidote. It's the healing, and it's the solution that we need so that something new can take the space. Don't be afraid of it. Make friends with it. Ruminate on endings, what you're letting go of, release, and how in some way, whether it's the smallest way possible, there's something that is progressing your spirit in that ending. And even for me, when I lost my mom, if you would have told me something was progressing my spirit with that ending, I would have been really annoyed at you. But with further reflection and 3 years later almost, I can see there were ways that my mom did everything for me that I had to learn to do for myself with her passing. And so that's not to say I wanted my mom to pass, but there's always some way that our spirit progresses through these endings, and to just observe that and notice that. And with something so complex as endings, loss, and grief, multiple things can be true at once. It can suck, it can be unfair, it can be painful, and it can progress our spirit in some way. So there's something here with that. There also was this image that kept coming through with the Grim Reaper as a friend of tombstones and properly marking the endings. And so there was a message here about how in ancient days there was more ceremony around death, and it was more integrated as a part of life and culture, and it's been so sanitized in our modern day, but that each version of ourself is almost like a mini death and rebirth moment that deserves a tombstone, that deserves to be commemorated, so that when you look back on how far you've come, you can send love to that version of self. You can see the progression of that. It kind of reminds me of this workshop exercise I have in my Love Life workshop, where you basically go through this marker of your life, and sort of like those on the side of the road, when people pass on the side of the road and you see those flowers and candles and things to mark where a passing was, you do your own timeline of the different versions of yourself that have died and been reborn through the experiences that you've gone through, specifically with Love Life in that workshop. But there's something here about reflecting on past versions of self and commemorating them, memorializing them, and loving them for exactly who they were in that moment and how they've helped you to get to where you are now. And this ties back into that idea of radical honesty, throat chakra, and speaking your truth that we were talking about with Krista. Because sometimes when it comes to the past, to death, to endings, we do one of two things. We think back to those things either with enshrinement, as my grief counselor taught me, or bedevilment. So we either are romanticizing things that have died and passed away and not looking at any of the difficult parts, any of the flaws, any of the painful parts of it, or we're bedeviling it and we're only looking at the painful parts. We're only talking badly about it. We're only in our anger. And I think there's also real power in being so real with ourselves as we look back on these mementos or these little marks on our map of deaths and rebirths, and how we are commemorating that. Are we being really honest about the truth and the full spectrum experience of each marker on our life map when we reflect, and our part in it, the other person's part in it, whatever it is? There's something here of like taking radical honesty and responsibility for everything. And part of that is this really true accounting for the exact energetic experience without swaying it towards one way or the other, romanticizing it or bedeviling it. So there's just so much consideration that's coming through in this time of endings, of release, and giving past versions of yourself so much love and credit and commemorating them, because without the work that your past self did, you would not be here today. And us now, our future selves, are sending love to us for doing the exact work we're doing right now. And it's all part of that cycle. So make friends with the Grim Reaper in the sense that what needs to go and what needs to die away is ultimately for you on some level. I also did have a little connection with a grandmother spirit, and basically her message was that on the other side, past loved ones have different perspectives than when they were here. And she was bringing to my attention that something was going on with the kids fighting about the sale of her house and who gets what and what she would have wanted and all of these things. And the message here for anybody going through a similar type of situation is that on the other side, material items do not matter. All that they take with them on the other side is love. Love is the bridge that binds us to them on the other side. Everything else falls away, just like the physical body. And so if you are finding yourself in a place where you're guilty, where you're wondering, what would they think about what I'm doing? Am I doing the right thing with their possessions or their belongings? All they care about is loving you and you being as loved, joy-filled, and in a harmonious situation as possible. So there's just a little message here of not getting too in your head, of knowing that it's going to be okay and realizing that material things are temporary, and on the other side, they really don't matter to us if they are not in connection with love. So say you have an important piece of jewelry, and when you wear it, you feel connected to your past loved one and you love them, and it makes that link even stronger, then that matters to them because it's connected to love. But things that are just arbitrary, like that aren't connected to love, aren't bringing you closer to them, don't feel guilty about that. It's all love. It's all love. It's all love. So those are the messages here today. And I'm going to be contemplating this myself because the Grim Reaper historically is not a friend. And that message really surprised me, but it shouldn't, as an eighth house stellium of death and rebirth. There is medicine in the endings and the dying away that is revealed to us through time. And I'm wondering, the spirit of the Grim Reaper, which is just one word for this spirit. There are so many different gods and goddesses throughout history that represent death and release. There's archangels connected to death. There's all of this. But when the Grim Reaper is just a universal name we can all recognize, what does that bring up for you? Where is the fear of death holding you back or keeping you in circumstances that aren't your highest circumstances? So where can you make friends with the Grim Reaper and be like, I fully trust you to help release anything from my life that needs to go. And I fully trust in my mind, body, soul that something more in aligned will take its place. So have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your day, everyone. Remember that life is too short not to be magical. Claire, do you have anything you want to add or say at the end?
I just really loved and appreciated that. I'm going through my own moment of losing something I didn't want to lose. So that was a beautiful way to think about it. So thank you.
Of course. I love you so much. And I think creating a tombstone or a memorial or a memento to the exact beauty that was and commemorating it for all it was in that time might be a powerful tool for people going through that to feel like it's not just gone in the wind. It's something that is sacred that can be revisited and contemplated and radically honest about, so that you'll have that screenshot to look back on and it will inform where you're growing.
I love that. I'm definitely going to try that.
Yeah. I'm going to try that too. So thank you for that, Spirit. Beautiful. Well, like I said, have a beautiful week, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I know that this conversation with Krista was so, so magical. And I'm going to sit with it myself, everything that came through. So much, much love.
Do you know Taylor has a workshop all about working with your angels to attract a soulmate connection? For anyone feeling stuck, stagnant, or disempowered in relationships or navigating single life, in this 3-part Go at Your Own Pace workshop, you will explore the spiritual, psychological, and magical toolbox that helped Taylor to call in her husband. From shadow work, navigating the dating world from a place of intuition and power, love life divination, knowing if someone is a test or soulmate potential, magical rituals, and so much more. Join at angelsandamethyst.com and use code 333 for $33 off. Love is your birthright. Did you know that Taylor does a monthly gathering called Earth Angel Club for each zodiac sign? She gives an astrological weather report, an energy update, and leads a guided angelic meditation attuned to the current energy. Plus, she gives ritual suggestions for each zodiac season. Check availability for Earth Angel Club on angelsandamethyst.com. Each EAC ticket provides priority scheduling with Taylor and is one of the best ways to skip the waitlist. If you're navigating an emergency, please inquire about Taylor's emergency fee as another way to skip the waitlist by emailing scheduling@angelsandamethyst.com. For more information on Taylor and her work, go to angelsandamethyst.com or connect with her on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. She is the one verified account with this name and will never DM you for a reading. If you have any questions about intuition, spirituality, angels, or anything and everything magical, please email contact@magichourpod.com. We will answer listener questions once a month in our solo episodes. Are you an aligned business owner that would like to advertise to our beautiful hummingbird community? Please email contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss the magic. And don't forget to leave us 5 sparkling star reviews. They help more magical people find the pod. Please screenshot and email your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com. And we will send you a free downloadable angelic meditation and enter you to win an angel reading with Taylor Paige. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 111 5-star reviews.
Thank you for listening to Magic Hour with Taylor Paige. Remember, you are magic.